manipulated into saying that.
Yes.
The Koreans or the Chinese or whoever must be doing something. What could they possibly be doing? Well, maybe it's hypnotism or drugs or whatever. It turns out that it's...
We actually take a step back for a second to get the timeline here, because like one of the things that I always have trouble thinking about, no matter how much I read this history and what it is the fact that you had this organization, the OSS, basically formed during World War II as a wartime intelligence agency. But after the war, the same people, the OSS exists, and then the same people in the couple years after the war basically just change the name to CIA, maybe add some extra extensions to what they can do around the law, that kind of thing, and create this organization that seems to me like it's almost like we called it the OSS in World War II, but it was basically CIA. Is that first of all, is that fair to say?
It is. The OSS is the precursor to the CIA. Yeah. It's not like the CIA grows out of the OSS. The OSS is terminated, and then the CIA is created in 1947 with the National Security Act. But you're right. It is a lot of the same people. In fact, if you just look at a list of CIA directors over the years, a lot of them came from the OSS for for a lot of the first few decades of the CIA. They're just directly from the OSS.
Right. So, the reason I bring that up is when you look at the history of, say, Allen Dulles, like let's pick on him for a second. He and his brother John Foster actually had long business relations from the private sector before OSS with Nazi Germany, because Nazi Germany was a burgeoning economy, so they had some business as corporate lawyers there, which, as crazy as that sounds, almost makes sense for a minute, just because they were such a big economy at the time before the world was taking them seriously as what they really were. But when they went to war, when you read these accounts, whether it be Devil's Chessboard by Talbot or other ones I've read, research done by like Henry Abbott, and who sourced a lot of things there, like it's almost like they went to war like, well, all right, they declared war on us, all right, we'll go fight the Nazis for you. But they weren't like that excited about it. And I say this because what they seemed to always be the most worried about in the back of their mind was the Bolsheviks and the USSR. And they felt like that was going to be, what became the Iron Curtain and stuff like that. And we're going to be in an ideological war, West versus communism in the East. And so they kind of like got through World War II as the OSS translated into the CIA. And the mission from the very beginning was, oh, we're in a Cold War now. Let's do the shit that we think the Russians are doing or that we want to beat them to. Like, is that a fair assessment?
It is, yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's very soon after World War II, or even at the end of World War II, the thinking, especially in the intelligence community, quickly becomes, we need to keep tabs on the Soviets, especially to see what they're doing. And in the case of MKUltra, the idea was that maybe they possess methods of mind control. That's what spurs MKUltra in the first place, is that not even the Soviets, but just communists in general, maybe the Koreans, maybe the Chinese, if they have these methods of mind control, then we should be able to figure out how they're doing it to defend against it. But also once once the CIA starts getting into that, well, maybe even if they're not doing that, we should develop these anyway for our own sake. Right. Yeah. So that's kind of the turn.
You start to rational. That's the thing. Like, this is the downfall of humanity. You may start something for the right reasons because you're like, well, they're bad objectively even. We don't want that in their hands. Therefore, we need to learn how to do it. And then once you get a hold of that power, potentially, if you do, now you're like, well, we're the good guys. We could use it for the right reasons, right? We could be the judge of that, and becomes this major slippery slope. But what was did they have, looking back at the evidence that they were using to try to say that like the Soviets had access to those types of powers or whatever, does any of that hold water today, or was it they were just scared and they're like, oh, maybe that's it right there?
Yeah, it's not as if the Soviets or Chinese or Koreans possess some kind of mind control technique that MKUltra was looking for. They thought they did. So originally, what led Allen Dulles to create MKUltra and put Gottlieb in charge of it was the Korean War. There were several pilots who had been shot down during the Korean War and captured as prisoners of war, and they confessed to committing biological warfare against the Koreans. They said, yeah, our planes had anthrax and typhus and bubonic plague and all kinds of stuff, germ bombs, and we were dropping them over the Korean people. And so the thinking in the CIA is, why would these pilots say this? Like, why are they saying this? That's not true. What's going on here? And so the thinking was, they must be manipulated into saying that. The
Yes.
Koreans or the Chinese or whoever must be doing something. What could they possibly be doing? Well, maybe it's hypnotism or drugs or whatever. It turns out that it's, the traditional methods of coercion. They're being
Right.
tortured, they're having sleep deprivation, they're having food deprivation.
Yep.
But it's very ironic too, because several of the people who eventually become involved in MKUltra are the ones who figured out that it was like sleep deprivation that's happening to the Koreans. For instance, Jolly West, who
Oh, boy.
yeah, he's mentioned in, Tom O'Neill's Chaos. I know y'all know about. He's one of the main psychiatrists who's evaluating these prisoners of war. And, I have a quote in the book where he says basically, there's only one thing that caused these people, to confess to crimes they didn't commit, and it was lack of sleep. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't sound like anything like MKUltra, and yet it's ironic. It's because he had investigated these Korean POWs that Sidney Gottlieb recruited him, because Sidney Gottlieb thought, okay, well, it wasn't these esoteric methods of mind control, drugs or hypnotism or something that got the Korean soldiers or the American soldiers in Korea to admit to something they didn't do, but maybe that's still possible. And maybe we should see if West knows anything about that. So they recruit him to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we even obviously know now when you'll look at regular criminal cases in the United States that have happened over the years and unfortunately continue to happen, where people will just, they'll be put in a holding interrogation room for a long time, talk to people for a weekend. They're not even necessarily sleep deprived, but there's just psychological fallacies that we are all capable of as humans that lead to some people giving false confessions, things that never happen. Like there's something about being in there and the person they're talking to and the methods of interrogation used that eventually they're like, yeah, no, I did this. And it's really tragic when you see these cases. But I would imagine, in addition to some of the more, I guess, like traditional war crime type methods you discussed, like torture and stuff like that, I would imagine there were probably also guys who maybe gave that up because they're just being interrogated for weeks at a time. And eventually they're like, you know what? I think I did drop typhus on everyone. And they actually believe it.
Yeah. I have no doubt that like false memories could be implanted like that. In fact, one of the things that Jolly West, this guy who is mentioned in Tom O'Neill's Chaos, he's very interested in false memories and trying to induce false memories through hypnotism. The ironic thing, well, he says he is able to induce some of these false memories. The ironic thing for me is that there are a lot of conspiracy theories that kind of come out of MKUltra after the 1970s once it's revealed to the public. People claiming that I was an MKUltra sex slave and the government, did all this stuff. And they said, I have memories of, They say they have memories of all these presidents abused me and vice presidents and governors and foreign leaders and all kinds of stuff. None of it's not true, but I actually think that they might think that it is true. I think that the memories that they have are not genuine memories in the sense that they experienced it, but I think they think that they're genuine memories. One of the reasons why is because, there's one woman in particular who says that her husband recovered these memories for her with hypnotism. And this is right after the Satanic Panic in the 1980s. And one of the main things of the Satanic Panic is that people were having hypnotism done on them to recover these supposed memories of it being involved in satanic rituals where we were sacrificing.
Bring the devil out of you! We're going to bring it out!
Yeah. And so, in fact, her husband, who supposedly recovered these memories, he says that he learned how to recover memories through several people who were involved in recovering memories during the Satanic Panic and got sued for falsely recovering memories of people and lost their medical licenses. One woman claims she won over $10 million in a lawsuit when she sued against him for, doing this to her. One woman claims that one of these guys who was involved in this organization, he implanted this false memory that she had been impregnated by aliens and was forced to abort the fetus and then cannibalize it and all kinds of stuff. And then, the husband of this MKUltra conspiracy theorist, he says, I learned how to recover memories from him. And so to me, it's like, I feel like this woman in particular I'm talking about the MKUltra conspiracies, I feel like she's a victim of this. I feel like she's been induced these memories into her, so supposedly recovered them. So I don't blame her that much, but I do think they're not genuine memories.
Right. It's so strange because there's a couple things here. Number one, and this relates to anything, not just like MKUltra claims or stuff like that. The internet allows so many people to say whatever they want to the point that a lot of people will either say stuff that they genuinely believe because something's happened to them and they're not well, or, say things that just they know patently aren't true. And therefore, it creates like a boy who cried wolf scenario because there's so much noise of people doing this that the very small, 0.01% of people who maybe are making a claim about X, whatever that is, are actually making a real claim, but they're stuck in all the noise of everyone else. And I can tell you, if I were a gatekeeper to, whatever it may be, whether it's government or not government involved, just a gatekeeper to some sort of nasty secret or something that's wrong that's happening, some sort of conspiracy, if you will, that would be my best weapon. Just a bunch of crazy people saying a bunch of shit because I'm like, yeah, there's nothing to see here. They're all crazy. And you get to throw out the 0.01% baby with the bathwater.
It's funny you say that because at the very end of the book, that's the exact point that I make. I make this exact point about how it almost serves, in some cases, the CIA's best interest to have these people out there spreading these lies. I don't know if they actually think they're lies, but I think they're lies. Spreading this misinformation or whatever it is, because it gets trapped in this cycle called censorship through noise, which is what you're explaining. There's so much noise out there.
Yes.
No one knows what to believe. And so we develop a kind of apathy. Well, if there's just too much to wade through, I can't determine what's true. Therefore, I don't care. I'm just not going to look into it. I don't know. So, that's harmful to legitimate researchers who are trying to expose these real abuses that happen, because many of the abuses, especially of MKUltra, are so sensational in themselves. The idea that we would hire prostitutes to drug unwitting victims with LSD or something,
it's real.
It sounds like the kind of thing that would be made up. So when there are a lot of other false claims out there that are just as sensational, it just seems like the kind of thing that would be false. So how should I actually believe this? Or maybe I should actually believe those things too, because this thing was so sensational. Maybe those are. So it muddies the waters of how do we actually determine what they did and what they didn't do. So I quote an intelligence officer in this book where he makes this point, basically saying it's in the CIA's best interest to facilitate these conspiracy theories by what he calls the kooks.
Yes.
The more kooks out there, the less people can actually wade through what actually did happen.
Yeah. Even when you look at people who haven't had something allegedly traumatic happen to them, like being an MKUltra experimentee or something like that, when you look at people online who doesn't even have to be a conspiracy or something, they just run with some sort of wild information, whatever it may be. And they know at the beginning, consciously, this is bullshit, right? But then they say it enough just from behind a keyboard every day as a part of a way to grift their way through this, that eventually, I've seen this enough online over the years through so many people, I think a lot of those people actually maybe make themselves mentally sick and actually do believe it after a while. So, what does that say about the people who have some sort of actual psychological trauma and then just believe other things happen to them? Like the possibilities with that are endless. What was that term you just used?
Censorship through noise?
Censorship. Yeah, that's great. I'm gonna use that. That's actually perfect, because that's exactly what it is. It's like, if you can have a way bigger crowd of people where you can't hear any of the individual voices, that's easier to control than the individual voice who's got a microphone.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a lot easier to do that, to drown out the noise, than to try to silence all the noise.
Right.
You can't ever silence all the noise, but if we drown it out, then it doesn't matter if there's noise there in the first place.
Right. Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.